There we go. So I'm going to call this meeting to order. It is 7:05. I am Deb Travis. I'm the chair of the Traffic and Transportation Committee for Community Board 8. We're a relatively small group tonight, so only I have my normal opening instruction, but I'll keep it pretty brief, which is in general, if when we open the discussion to folks on the call, we'll usually start with the committee and then we'll open up more generally. If you're on Zoom to raise your hand, we ask everybody to raise their hand. If you're on Zoom to raise your hand, you will select reactions at the bottom of the screen. If you change your name in Zoom to your actual name, it'll assist us in entering into the minutes, but it's absolutely not required. If you're on the phone, *6 to mute or unmute, and *9 to raise your hand or lower your hand. And so with that, I'm just going to do attendance really quick. Kelly, I think I saw you there.
Yes, good evening.
Hey, Kelly, welcome. Mary Ellen Gibbs.
Yes, I am. Good
Are you
evening.
there? Chris Calhoun, who's driving, so I won't disturb him.
Driving down Riverdale Avenue.
Drive careful. David Gelman.
Here.
You're there. Ed Green,
Present.
you're the.
Present.
And then Georgia Santiago. Okay. And then other board members, Marty, I see you're here. Rosemary Ginty, I see you're here. Sylvia Alexander. Is there anybody else I'm missing? Are there any elected officials? I don't think so. Anybody from agencies? Not expecting anybody. Okay, great. So I just want to make a note. So Osvaldo Jimenez did not reapply for the community board, so he's no longer on this committee. So just as a matter of housekeeping, I think we'll start with the approval of minutes of the meeting of March 31st, which were distributed to community members ahead or to committee members ahead of the meeting. Does anybody have any changes that they would like to make?
I have a question regarding the amended resolutions because I didn't see them included in the minutes.
Oh, I put in the original resolution because the amended one would, I was thinking that the amended one would be in the full board minutes.
Well,
So I,
mhm.
yeah, oh, yeah,
Go
no,
ahead.
no.
No, go ahead, finish your thought.
Oh, no, my thought was simply that in this committee meeting on March 31st, the resolution that we voted on was this shorter one, with just the one whereas and the one therefore be it resolved. That was why I included that one in these particular minutes.
Okay, but subsequent to the meeting, we also had the friendly amendment after the executive committee meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the minutes should reflect the amended resolutions so that the committee minutes reflect have the same information as the board meeting minutes.
So we do have the we do have the parliamentarian on the call, so I'm going to take a moment to take advantage of that, if you don't mind, Marty. I think the question is that Kelly's raising is that, you know, in the March 31st minutes, we have just the very short original resolution, which was later changed. And then when it was presented to the full board, it was a longer resolution with more whereases. However, the therefore be it resolved did not change and the vote did not change. My sense is that if we included the longer resolution, if we included it in these minutes, we almost would need to state that there were two, almost like that there were two resolutions, because which I think might get confusing. That the longer resolution is a product of the full board meeting and was not what was voted on during the committee, and so that the committee minutes should reflect what was voted on during the actual meeting itself. What's your opinion on that, Marty?
The minutes should reflect what took place at last month's meeting, and these current minutes ought to reflect that the board voted on an amended resolution, which was the full whereas units.
So when you say current, do you mean that when we do the minutes for this April meeting, that we would note that? or-
Acknowledge that during the course of the month or the couple of weeks between the committee meeting and the board meeting, the minutes were, no one likes the word wordsmith, but the minutes were enhanced
Well,
and the
completed.
full board voted on this, on the following verbiage.
Thank you. I've got Ed, his hand up, and then I'll have Rosemary go.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Marty just said this or not, but I agree with what you're saying about what happened at the meeting, That's what should be reflected. But I also kind of agree with Kelly's sentiments that, in the spirit of what happened, maybe there should just be it should be written as is with maybe perhaps some type of asterisk stating that underneath it that the proposal was changed, the resolution was changed, was updated via conversation we had at the executive and board and so on. That's it.
That's what I said, but after the asterisk.
That's what thank you. I got lost in that word salad a little bit. Thanks, Marty.
But Marty, I thought I heard you say that you thought that it would be acceptable to put in the April minutes, the minutes from this meeting, which I think makes more sense to me because it follows the timeline of this meeting happening after the board meeting. So we're essentially reporting back on the board meeting that this was the final resolution.
Correct.
Okay. Rosemary, you've got your hand up?
Yeah, thank you. Just the two quick points. One is, I'm not a member of this committee, but I have to tell you, I sat through that agenda, and there was no whereas clause presented for people to vote on. It was just a no vote. But that is up to the members of your committee as to how they're going to vote, whether there was a whereas and therefore be it resolved, approved. It's up to the members of your committee. On the other point, on Kelly's point, it has been done a number of times, many times, that there's, I'll call it a footnote, something goes into the minutes. It's not the minutes of the meeting, but it is information to the public that subsequent to this meeting, there was a resolution adopted, or subsequent to this meeting, something happened. It happens not frequently, but Marty's right. It can go into the minutes, but it's not part of the minutes. It's separate. Whether you footnoted or asterisked it or something like that. Again, whether your committee thinks that you voted on the whereas clause is up to the members of your committee, but including the bigger, the broader resolution that was adopted by the board, you can, if you want to, include it asterisk, do you know what I mean? Footnote, whatever. It can be included for information, but okay, I'll stop. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So what I would like to propose is that in the March minutes, that we put a line that says, please see the April 20th minutes for the final version of this resolution. There's something to indicate to, to someone reading these minutes that there was that the final board approved resolution was had different text than this.
That sounds right to me.
Are we comfortable with that? So we'll just.
Yeah, I agree.
Kelly, are you comfortable with that since you raised the original?
I'm fine. Either way, I think the cleaner way would be to actually footnote it, as both Marty and Rosemary have suggested.
Well, that's what I'm saying, to add the note to the March
Okay.
minutes.
Okay,
Yeah,
but
a March minutes noting that the full long resolution can be found in the April.
that's fine. I guess my confusion with what you were saying was that you indicated you wanted to add a sentence to the minutes. So what you're indicating is that you would like to add a footnote to the minutes. If you said footnote, I would be amenable to doing that.
When we say footnote, Can I write, I would like to just have an asterisk because I don't wanna, I'm concerned that the footnote might get like, in between, like, I don't see, I think it's gonna be technically complicated to have a footnote accurately go through all the hurdles it needs to get through, including me adding it correctly in the first place.
Well, that's
Um,
a different issue. You're adding it correctly in the first place is a different issue, but it's done all the time and it's written right into the software. So there really shouldn't be any issues with it.
I'm just gonna put a note that like to please see the April 20th minutes for the full final version of this. And I'll put it in kind of parentheses, so it's clearly like not part of the actual what happened here, but that there was additional change. So for the final version of this resolution. As voted on by the board. Full board. So I added in parentheses, please see the April, I can share a screen actually, it's easier. It's March. So here are the minutes. So I added after committee vote, please see April 2022 traffic and transportation minutes for the final version of this resolution as voted on by the full board. Does that work?
You need a little asterisk in front of it, but perfect.
Sure.
There you go.
In the inside of the
And are we-
parentheses?
Outside, inside, yeah.
I'll just do that. Kelly, yeah. Oh, come on. man. Oh, yeah, Kelly, were you saying something? Okay,
You can, instead of saying as voted on by the full board, you should really spell it out. So
what do you mean?
community board,
Oh, I see.
community board 8 and the date of the meeting in which it was voted upon. So I think that meeting was April 7th.
Committee was
It
March
included-
31st.
Here, do you know the date?
The committee vote was March 31st.
No,
No,
this
the
is
full
the
board
full
meeting
board.
date,
Oh, it was
12th.
last Tuesday.
The
On the
12th,
April 12th, 2022.
Okay. Anything else? Does that work?
Fine. You can put a period after that.
Okay, and then I'll make a note to include the full resolution. All right, and Mary Ellen, you had your hand up for this?
Oh, I was just showing my doobie manners because I wanted to agree with what you're saying with the asterisk. I want to raise
Ah.
my hand first, my
Okay.
doobie manners.
And then Rosemary, you've got your hand up. Was that from before? Okay, probably.
Sorry, I forgot to lower it. I apologize.
Nope, all fine. Any other changes for the March minutes? All right. So if there are no other objections, I would like to move to approve the minutes by the amended minutes by unanimous consent.
No, I'm opposed, but I'm not gonna make a big deal about it.
Oh, well, so I'll do a vote then. So all those opposed to the minutes?
I'm opposed.
Okay. Is there something, David, that you didn't say anything about having a correction that you would like? Is there a correction that you're seeking?
Yeah, no, I don't, I disagree with the edit that was made, but
I see.
it's not worth pursuing.
Okay. So opposed. David Gellman. Anybody else who's opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, therefore I will assume everybody else is in favor. Support. That's right. All right, so chair's report. I don't have a lot for tonight. Just as a one follow-up item on Riverdale Avenue discussion that we had last month. I am submitting paving and pedestrian ramp requests just for pedestrian ramps, or when I was there on my site visit that I saw have not been updated the way they're supposed to be, and that there's certainly some streets that need some paving. So I'm in the process of submitting that, and I've reached out to Riverdale Main Street Alliance to see if they have anything they would also like requested specific blocks other than Riverdale Avenue itself, which obviously has already been submitted. And just a reminder that we're kind of in the prime season for making paving requests. Usually paving is done in the fall. And so if we submit the request now, then they'll go figure out if they've done paving within their specific timeframes, and then and whether the street qualifies for paving. It's also how I found out that the Kingsbridge Road was a capital project. So it's good just to submit the requests and with enough time that they can action it and then get it onto their schedule for the fall. So I submitted all of our step streets from our budget priorities to DOT. So still awaiting the results from that and from their inspection of those streets. So I'd like to move on to the first item on the agenda, which is the budget priorities for fiscal year 24. I guess we should just start with capital. Let's see. And David, I wanted to thank you for your comments. I thought we could just talk them through all the tweaking and whatever on the call. That would be easier.
Okay.
We got a
That's
light
fine.
agenda tonight, so.
Yeah. Excuse me.
All right, so can everybody see our fiscal year 24 capital? So, all right. So I think the biggest thing is that we still haven't heard back from DOT regarding the step streets. So I think we probably just want to leave them on the list until we do. And then if they do get back to us and say, okay, we're just going to fix this one as a matter of regular maintenance, then we can remove it at that point from the list. I put together the list in order based on our last meeting. Is this kind of the right order? Is this how everybody remembers it? I just want to just make sure to take care of that piece of business first.
Yeah, that looks really good.
Thank you. But, yeah, I think it's a good solid list.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah,
It looks good when you put it 1 through 10 like that. It really.
cleans it, right? Stops
Yeah,
looking
nice,
so like
yeah.
a bunch of notes. David, you had some tweaks and stuff around language. Is this a
Well, yeah, I mean, there are no short titles on any of them.
okay?
I thought you'd do that, you would do that before the meeting. So, all right, but let's get it done.
So can you give me an example? I think it would be helpful of for the first couple of like what you're seeing when what you're thinking about when you're thinking about short titles, because these are, in my mind, these are kind of like already very short. They're all
No,
just
the
one
description.
line.
For example,
Yeah.
first one, Major Deegan, stormwater management feasibility study.
Okay. Got it. Okay. Management.
And underscore it. You got to realize that there are
Right.
going to be many other people reading this, and what we can do to expedite it is helpful.
No, totally. And so then the format is I'm gonna underline that,
Yeah.
bold it, and then anything, and then is a short description like that. Feasibility study for stormwater.
Isn't it a stormwater management feasibility study?
I think it's probably could be either.
Okay, fine. All right, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this.
Yeah. So.
It would
okay.
also be helpful, you don't need environment and sanitation, ENB and SANIT, traf and trans. Because remember,
Oh, I see.
we, we've got 10 other committees. And then
So
all of
it's,
their stuff.
So it's okay.
You can
so
edit
it's
that
like-
later.
Yeah, but it's, so you're saying for like ENS, it would say ENS and TNT, or is there, I guess what I'm saying is. are
What I
there
said was
standard-
ENV and SANIT and traf and trans.
Okay, so is there a specific place I would go to get this specific, well, I guess they're all, the rest of them are traffic and trans, okay.
Yeah.
TRAF, wait.
Yeah.
Traffic and trans,
Yeah, traf, 2Fs is fine, and I would do trans P.
really?
Well, trans tends to have a different meaning these days.
Well, but track also, it like doesn't seem,
I think this is a bit of micromanagement.
Have whatever you want.
yeah, I'm just gonna let it,
Fine.
okay. So as far as order goes, are we okay with, I can add titles to these to make it shorter. Is there anything, anybody have any concerns with any other wording or order,
Yeah, number 3.
or, all right.
Did you-
Rehabilitate, yeah,
I suggested to you 2 weeks ago to go look at it. Have you done so?
over the, I have not.
Because it's not, I mean, it is old school, but I don't think it's in terrible shape.
Mhm.
I think that the, safety suggests that we deal with the step streets throughout the district, but this overpass, could be better, could be improved, but I wouldn't put it in front of all the step streets that are in very bad shape and are very dangerous.
Mary Ellen,
This is a main overpass that is dangerous to senior citizens traveling with their shopping carts to Key Food. And it is, including myself. My friend broke her leg on there because it was so wobbly and bad. It needs to stay right where it is.
Is the pavement broken?
Yes, very broken.
All right, not in my observation of a couple of weeks ago.
Well,
That's why I suggested Deb go look at it.
I go over it all the time because it's right here.
Vittorio,
Yeah, I just want to add that when it rains, that overpass can be very difficult to deal with. And when it snows also. So I happen to agree that it should stay where it is.
thank you. I mean, I think one of the things that makes a strong case for it is that, this one has been a priority for a while for TNT. And so I hate to have it sink below the step streets, otherwise it could actually fall pretty far.
And seniors are a priority shopping. That's their main way to get to Key Food from that side.
Ed or Chris, do you have any strong opinions about moving the pedestrian walkway or leaving it as it is? Or Kelly?
I don't have a strong opinion on moving it. I am familiar with the overpass, that it's been patched several times and definitely needs work.
Mhm.
I don't know if it should drift down below the step street, so I don't have a strong feeling on that there. But I do know it's seen better days.
I mean, it will be a major capital project because it is not ADA compliant, which means it's going to have to be completely redone.
But that's almost another reason to do it. I
Right.
mean, there are people.
No, I'm
who,
talking about
you
major
know.
capital, which is way above our pay grade. I'm not
Well, this is
saying,
the capital budget list. I mean, yeah, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you.
I would suggest that since we do have a member on our committee who's very familiar with it and had a friend who broke her leg on it, that, yeah, it's an issue and it should probably stay where it is. That's just my 2 cents.
Dan, got your hand up.
Just as a note, that this overpass is slated for rehabilitation within, I think, the next 2-3 years from DOT. The previous discussions we've had about this bridge with Navardo when he was Bronx Commissioner was that in order to do a massive rehaul of it, to rebuild it and restructure it so that it is ADA compliant with that, they need to do a feasibility study because of the amount of space along the parkway needed for the ramps. So I think that was the last place that we had left off with DOT was if we were going to do something, we would ask for a feasibility study on doing a restructure, but the rehabilitation, I think that we had kept in just to keep it on the DOT radar because it was slated for rehabilitation, though a modest one.
I haven't seen it on any of the 3-year or 10-year capital plans. Like how?
I'll send you the
where's
info on it.
Okay. Okay, and then the purpose of the study, then the feasibility study was for ADA ramps.
It was
to.
Yeah, it was to reconstruct the bridge for the ramps, and in order to do that, they needed to do a feasibility study first.
Okay. See, okay, so because we took out that that feasibility study part before, thinking that that might improve its odds to rehabilitate pedestrians, but we didn't know there was an ADA issue there.
Deb, may I just say something? I'm always
Yeah.
leery when I hear DOT feasibility study. So in this case, Dan, would this, in your opinion, would this feasibility study would be strictly focused on ADA ramps, or is it anything goes like they usually try to run on us?
I would say that DOT always anything goes. That being said, you know, there were two distinct issues. One was just the basic rehabilitation for the problems that Mary Ellen had noted, which is on their radar and they're supposed to be doing within the next few years. And then beyond that, because the previous discussion was how bad it was because of the steps as opposed to a ramp. And, you know, the response that we had gotten was, if you want to do that, then you have to first start with the feasibility study.
Okay.
So it's two separate things. The rehabilitation is not going to change the ramps. They can't do anything with that.
Mhm.
So rehabilitate is to fix the things that Mary Ellen was talking about, which is still very important. And then you've got separate and aside from that, if you're looking to redo the bridge, that's a whole other separate item.
So would it make sense to have this say rehabilitate the pedestrian walkway and perform a feasibility study on adding an ADA ramps? Like to make it.
Yeah, or just do it as a separate item, whichever, or do it as a, I don't remember if we had a separate item for it or not. I don't recall.
Yeah, we didn't have a separate item for it. This used to just say feasibility study for this walkway.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, it sounds like a separate issue to me because if you take on the feasibility study for the ADA ramps, which I think we all agree would be good, it turns this into a bigger project and makes it less likely that they're actually going to focus and rehabilitate the walkway.
so is it possible that rehabilitating the walkway should just be on the expense items, and that it's not a capital project?
I don't know how much these things cost, so I wouldn't know that answer.
Yeah, Dan, do you have any idea? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's still a capital. The rehabilitation is
I
still a
would think
capital.
so too, because it's really, those steps are busted.
All right.
The only
So
description I could give you, it's a mess.
if we did it as the study for the ADA ramp as a separate item, is it like below the step streets? Because we also just have a lot of step streets, and then we have this feasibility study for a new step street. I mean, where would we want to put it? Anybody?
I don't know. What do you think?
So,
Yeah.
Oh,
Dan?
I'm sorry, I just wanted to read to you the email, the information I have, the last item on this. I have, if you guys would like to hear it.
Sure.
This is from Navardo back in 2020, February 2020. Here's a description for the scope of work for West 236th Street pedestrian bridge over Henry Hudson Parkway. Corrective rehabilitation will involve locally cleaning and repointing joints in stone masonry, reconstructing cracked cladding stones on the pier and replacing missing stones, inspecting and replacing bridge railing and fence, rehabilitating deteriorated concrete at bridge deck, ramp and parapet, preparing deck surface and installing waterproofing membrane over bridge, replacing asphalt overlay on bridge deck, replacing all bearings and anchor bolts, rehabilitating bearing pads, pedestals, replacing deteriorated lighting fixtures, pull boxes and junction boxes. And then he wrote, the final design for all 9 bridges is underway and is expected to be complete by the end of spring or early summer. Construction for a component rehab project is generally about 3 years. This contract, meaning this bridge, anticipates a contract starting in 22 and completion in late 24. I'll follow up with you about the bridge order. So we don't know which order this one is in, but it's supposed to be finished by 2024.
So is that, but that is New York City DOT, right? It's not,
NYC, yeah,
Okay.
this was from Novardo, NYC DOT.
so in theory, actually, we may need, we could remove the pedestrian walkway request from this,
Oh,
or at
no.
least,
I
keep the,
always,
yeah.
my opinion on that is always leave it in until it's done,
Yep,
or you have money, or it's funded at least.
But do we, but would we want to put the feasibility study ahead of it, like flip them? So that the pedestrian walkway stays on the list, but it doesn't take up a prime spot, if we know that it's already in the docket.
it needs a prime spot. These people are killing themselves on those steps.
Ed,
Unless they
or-
want to pay for people's lawsuits, I mean, when they keep falling.
Rosemary, you've got your hand up?
No, I'm on another issue. You're discussing this should continue. I don't want to
Okay.
inject myself into this particular issue. I want to speak on something else.
Okay.
Mhm.
So are we, then, so it sounds like we're generally fine with leaving the pedestrian walkway or the Henry Hudson Parkway here at number 3. And then we'll have the feasibility study above the below or above the new one. I feel like the ADA ramp should be above a new step street myself. But
That sounds right to me.
okay. This one. Feasibility study, okay, wait, so this one was 7. We flipped. This is 5. All right, and then, okay, so this is where we're at for our top 10. And then if DOT gets back to us regarding the step streets, and we'll start to kick them off. And then the things that are below them would start to come up. So we should take a look at what's below them, because they may come into play in our top 10. So we have the feasibility study for the new step street, which is now number 11. We have reconstruct sidewalk on east side of Independence Ave between West 240th and West 242nd. This one, I don't have anything actually to update on it. It was on our budget budget priorities last year, which makes me kind of lean towards keeping it there. Yeah, I don't have anything new to report about it as far as ownership or anything like that. It's been a little bit, this last month's been a little bit nutty with the board office and trying to get some responses on things like this. The park style lighting around the pedestrian. So this one I had a question. Oh, David, did you raise your hand about the sidewalk?
It was about the step streets.
Oh,
Why don't we
yeah.
combine them into one request with several bullets for each of the locations? Because you're probably not going to get it, in the priority order, all of them.
I see what you're saying. Oh, Ed, Mary Ellen, how's that? What do you think? And I think a lot of these actually we can combine because it's rehabilitating. It's just that in
It's the same
general,
language, just different locations.
it's just,
Yep.
no, yeah.
What's the question? I didn't.
I know, thanks, Ed. Thanks, Ed.
So the question is that David is suggesting that we take number 4, number 5, number 6, number 7, and number 9 and combine them into one capital request. My only concern with it, I'll just say my opinion quick first, is that these step streets tend to stay on the budget priorities and kind of work their way up, and that they only tend to pick one off at a time. And so I worry that, you know, that it's not like they're going to say, okay, we're going to do these 5 step streets. They're just going to do, if any of them get picked off, they're just going to get one. So
That would be my concern as well. You know, if you're putting them all together, it's all of a sudden it's a major
thing.
thing for them. One looks a little less daunting, and I mean, this is just all speculation, of course. I don't know how exactly they work, but that's how I would think it would go, that they would just take one at a time and not, you know, so I think we'd probably be hurting ourselves if we put them together and risk, well, not necessarily hurting ourselves, but risking that none of them would be addressed.
Right. That's what I think too, is that then it's very easy to say, well, this is a huge project to redo all of the step streets. So, yeah. Mary Ellen.
I totally agree with you and Ed, to keep them separately, because like you said, they pick them off one at a time. Rather, if you bunch them together, they're gonna go like, and maybe, you know, like one will get done. They'll get kind of buried in if you put them together.
Right. I mean, and we've seen this already where like Summit Street got picked off of the list and done last year. I think 229th was also on the list and got picked off. And so
Right.
they have been kind of each year been able to advocate for like one step street, you know, strongly enough that there's been some action. So to come back down here for a second, these 3, so the park style lighting, this is really one where the Parks Department, it's a Parks Department thing. And so I put Parks first. I don't know how helpful it is to have all of the agencies, from my understanding of how this process works, is like really this is a Parks, this will be a Parks thing. And so is it helpful to leave it on our list, I guess is my question.
Deb, as far as the committees are concerned, you mean taking some of the committee names off the list? Is that what you're referring to?
I guess what I'm referring to is, is it appropriate to have something where DOT is not the lead committee or the lead agency, but where Parks is the lead agency by far? Like Parks, this is really a Parks NYPD thing. And then because it's a reservoir, I included DEP, and because DOT does lights, I included DOT, and that's kind of how we connect into it. But that maybe this is too tangentially connected to TNT to be on our budget priority.
Well, it's been my experience on this board that things are treated with higher priority if they have joint support from other committees. I mean, Dan and Rosemary could speak better to that than I can with their experience, but that's just been my understanding. And as chair of the Public Safety Committee, we have this on our budget, even though it's going to be primarily coming from Parks. It's important to us, and we feel that it is a public safety issue because of all the break-ins. We need the lighting because there's car break-ins there. It is undoubtedly a public safety issue, even though the agency we're lobbying for this funding is not, traditionally from our sector.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So is this too low?
It seems appropriate. Oh, is it too low?
Yeah, for something that's like this, like on this list, for something that's this much of a joint priority, are we underselling it then? If it's something where several committees can agree this is something that should be done?
I don't know. I mean, I thought we kind of settled on this order last time. I personally, as chair of public safety, yeah, I'd like to move it up, but it's not, I mean, I felt we're kind of settled on this already. So I wouldn't be opposed to moving it or not moving it. It would all depend on what the rest of the committee feels. I don't know if we want to go into too much discussion about this, because this was what we did last month,
Yeah, I think this is just when we're finalizing everything and making sure now that we know what our top 10 is, like and we're doing 11, 12, 13, and 14. Like, is this just this at 14 again? You know what I'm saying? It's fine. But is there, I mean, Mary Ellen or,
It could
yeah.
be, when I
If the-
think about it, it could be moved up because remember I told you that these people wanted to hijack this meeting about people car theft and all that
Mhm.
I said, this is the wrong meeting. There is a lot of talk about car theft, that there's not
a big
enough
deal.
lighting around these areas.
Mhm.
So that could be more of a priority to move it up.
Yeah, no, I mean, Ed reminds me how completely of the moment this is.
Yeah,
And there's just been more crime in general with folks getting threatened and such.
and yeah, they're
Um,
they're actually drilling holes in people's gas tanks now on top.
It's crazy. Well, and maybe Ed saw this on Sedgwick Avenue was it on Sunday? There was a car on blocks with all of its tires stolen. So,
Yeah, that's a lot over here, a lot.
yeah.
Yeah, I didn't hear about that. But as far as the order is concerned, I do have it on the public safety. Ultimately it's gonna, get somewhere within on our full board. So I mean, I don't know. I'm fine with it where it is. Everything has some level of importance on our list. Otherwise it shouldn't be there,
Right. No, totally.
I agree with that. Leave it where it is.
Okay. So this is then, and then we've got reconstruct sidewalk east side of Independence Avenue. We've got this park style safety lighting. And we've got the street and sidewalk on West 235th Street between, and this is the one that I think Rosemary probably wants to speak to. Is that correct, Rosemary?
Yes, but you go ahead and you want to describe it first?
So there's a block on West 235th Street between Independence Avenue and Henry Hudson Parkway West, where the north side of the street is unfinished. And so essentially the request is to have the sidewalk installed so that to essentially complete the street. When we spoke to DOT about this, they said that it wasn't something for capital, that it would require capital funding perhaps, but that it wasn't a capital budget request because they would bill parts of it back to the co-op that is adjacent to the sidewalk. And that co-op was already on notice that they needed to complete the street. It's actually helpful that Dan's on the call, because Dan, I know you've got more experience with when buildings are built with the sidewalk requirements and street plan. So when I spoke to DOT, they said that the building should already know that they're supposed to complete that sidewalk, and that that's something that they should just simply be doing, and that they've reminded them to do it. Is that?
I think this is where I come in. This is where we were a month ago, Deb, to tell you the truth. We
Yeah.
were here a month ago.
There's been a couple of things happening this month. You may have, it's been a busy month, so, yeah.
Yes. Terms of what DOT, your conversation with DOT is taking us back years. It doesn't matter what, can you still hear me? It says connection, okay. I know your conversation with DOT takes us back years. It has been known, and it should be known to everybody, that when you do a building, you have a builder and pavers plan. Okay, you have to do your sidewalk and do the street. There are certain situations in which DOT will allow you not to do it. What those situations are, I have no idea. Be my guest, ask DOT what they are. I don't know, but this is one situation in which the south side of the street was built to builders and pavers. The north side was not. The north side has been a problem for years. And I do have to tell you that this is the last item on the TNT capital budget request list. I'm not going to comment about what I think about that. This has been an issue for years. It came up quite accidentally along with 254th Street. And 254th and 235th, the TNT committee hammered both of these. And Navarro Lopez wrote a letter to the community board and said the letters are identical language, two separate streets. If you want these done, don't be asking us. You have to make them a capital request or it won't be done. It will not be done unless you make it a capital request. Okay? And for this to go to the bottom of the list after the letter came in April 2018, after years of fighting with them, it's not a shining moment for this committee or for this board. That is my direct opinion on this. This needs to be taken care of. It should be taken care of. To go back and say, I guess I need who, and I wrote you today, Deb, what is your conversation with DOT at the moment? They are saying the people in the building are aware that maybe they should do this. What is the nature of the conversation? Because please understand, we're talking about these conversations with the building owner go back years. And they said, no, we're not going to do it. The only way to do it is the city does it, and then they bill the owner. So now we're back to having a conversation with the building owner. I will persist in asking in every meeting, tell me how many conversations DOT has had with the building owner. When and what was said and what is the answer?
So
because we're back years. We're just going back where we started with this issue. This is a catch-22. One of my favorite books is Catch-22. Okay, we will not repair this. The city will not deal with this. Will not deal with it. You have to make it a capital project, and then you make it a capital project. No, not a capital project. We have to talk to the owner. It's a classic catch-22. They are putting this committee in. Classic catch-22.
So Rosemary, just to stop you for a second. I think when we discussed this at the committee last month, the committee was fine with us pursuing DOT having the building, like doing the sidewalk, with the board office, asking DOT to continue to pursue the sidewalk. I think I haven't had a chance to actually do that piece of it because there's been other stuff. It's been just a really busy month, but that it's still, it's still certainly a priority that we can follow up on. I think that it's the correct spot on the budget priority list because the street does have a sidewalk, at least on the south side, and that it's not heavily trafficked in terms of pedestrian traffic in that block. So that, in terms of other safety issues.
Deb, don't get me wrong. If it is the desire of this committee to have West 235th Street after years to be the last item on the agenda, that's fine. It is the committee will decide where it goes. What offends me is the belief that DOT talking to the building is going to do something. Mm-hmm. I'm telling you, you're being snookered. We're back where we were easily, 6, 7, 8 years ago. We're back where we were. You're being snookered. Now, if you decide this is not a high priority and it stays there, that's fine. But don't do it based on faulty information from DOT. That's my only point, and that's the last thing I'm going to say. Do not be snookered by DOT.
Okay, thank you, Rosemary. Mary Ellen, is your hand up for this or for something else?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't lower it.
No, it's all fine.
I'm sorry, I can't raise my hand, but I just want to say, Rosemary, I remember there was a letter, and I don't remember if you were chair or if I was chair, but DOT sent us a letter regarding this. Do you remember that letter?
It is from.
And I believe it said for us to make it a capital project or along those lines.
That's exactly right. I've
So-
said this. How many times have I said this?
No, no,
Yes,
and
indeed.
I don't know if Deb and the committee have the letter, but maybe we
We
can
do
forward them.
not. Yeah, no,
If
if
we
you
could
could
forward
forward
them
that,
that letter,
that would be great.
Deb,
maybe
Deb
we can
has
keep-
the letter and the community board has the letter, okay?
I don't have
This
a
is
letter
from-
saying this should be a, just from the DOT saying this should be a capital project. I
yeah,
do
yeah,
not-
that's
I
the
do-
letter. Oh, you don't?
Mm-mm.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And
Kira
if you
can get you
did,
that
would you
letter.
change your mind?
I'm sorry, what, Rosemary?
And if you did have that letter, even though I've said this over and over, I've sent the letter to the community board. You have it from months ago, from a year ago. You,
I don't-
if the committee has it, okay.
I don't have a, I do
it-
not have a letter that says.
I'll
that
tell you
this
where you
particular
got the
project-
letter. When you were doing the Independence Avenue proposal, you were talking about different improvements down the street. And I raised the issue of all the improvements you're talking about. It's interesting that you don't include 235th Street as a real safety issue. I sent the letter then, okay? So it's,
So
you know,
I guess with something like this, being that DOT is now telling Deb something else in other communications, maybe we establish a paper trail back with them with this letter to say, hey, this is the letter that you sent to us on X date saying it should be a capital project.
Well, I mean, I think what we can do is we can leave it on the list as a capital project. And then we can request that, they proceed, and then see, hold their feet to the fire on what they say they need to do next in order to.
But I guess that's what I'm trying to get clarity on. If they told you one thing in a conversation and we have a letter stating something else, I think we need a paper trail to basically say, hey, this is the last thing we have on file. Are you telling us it should be something different? And if they're having communications with the building and they're told the building something other than what they've communicated to us, then we need to know that.
I've got two other hands up here. Just one second. Matt.
But I'm sorry, but again,
So Dan, wait 1 second. I just want to finish off the conversation, then we can decide what we want to do as far as next steps. Matt?
Yeah, hi, thank you.
Yeah.
Just a member of the public, and I haven't really attended these meetings before, but I had asked, I sent an email earlier, Deborah, I think that you may have received it with regard to the Capock Street Palisade Avenue project.
Oh, let
And-
me stop you right there. I want to finish off this particular budget item first.
I know, this is relevant to that. Because it's a budgetary issue, and I don't know if there's a set dollar amount that is allocated to Board 8 for traffic and transportation. And if there is a set dollar amount, then you're allocating it, then my
Well,
question.
we're not allocating it. These
Well,
are,
You're requesting, right?
we're not even requesting.
There is no set
There's
budget.
there is no set
No
budget.
requests.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're
because-
just, basically, the committee itself is saying, okay, these are the priorities for the community, which then, that the agency or electeds can take into consideration when they're thinking about funding or allocating, but that we don't have any power to allocate.
Got it. Or to recommend, or that there's a set dollar amount. that
There's
is
no,
allocated.
there's no set, we could make a list of 200 things if we wanted to, or a list of 2.
Okay.
There's no
Thank
set
you.
dollar amount.
It was only because of that project on Palisade and Capock, I'm sure cost a lot of money to do in the first place and then to try to remediate. And so I wouldn't want that to penalize Board 8 in its budgetary allocations or requests.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's taken into consideration with public safety projects.
Okay,
So-
thank you.
Yeah, no, totally. Ed?
Okay, I just wanted to clarify something for myself with this last item.
Yeah.
Now, it was mentioned that if, let's say the DOT, well, they took this up and they reconstructed the street, does that mean that the co-op owners are going to have to pick up some of the cost of this? That's the way it seemed to me.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes, yes.
Okay, so that.
Yeah, that was their argument for why it wasn't a budget priority item, because they would
Yes.
be billing back.
So by them doing this reconstruction project, they're gonna foot some of the bill, and Rosemary, they're okay with this? Is, because that would.
I have no
That-
idea whether they're okay with it. I
I think
have
that they probably
absolutely no
don't want to
idea.
pay for it. That's why,
That-
probably why there's no sidewalk there.
I mean, because that, if the residents there would be charged some money for a project that we're basically kind of initiating here, that would almost make this a non-starter for me. I mean, I don't know.
I think
What
it's
am I-
it's a co-op, so the co-op would be responsible for it. But the
Not that
co-op's
they-
already legally responsible. They're supposed to have already built the sidewalk.
Ah, gotcha. Okay, if they're legally responsible, then that's a whole nother.
That's it.
I
Yeah,
got it. Now I'm, because that was almost a deal breaker for me, but if you said it's their legal obligation, that changed.
yeah,
Thank
they should have done it when they built the building, and then they
Exactly.
didn't.
Thank
And
you.
so,
Now I understand.
we are.
better. Thanks.
Exactly. Ed, I can send a picture of the fire hydrant is there. And the curb, that little teeny postage stamp. Deb, I sent you a picture. Maybe you can send it to your committee members so they'll understand what this street is. Could I ask you to do that? Would you,
Sure,
or
I
you
can
want
do
me
that.
to send it? Good.
I can
And
do
you
that.
will see the fire hydrant is built, and you see they did a little postage stamp curb. So everybody, so you know exactly where the edge of the street is mapped to and where it would be built to, as opposed to the fear that was put into us 1 month ago, Rosemary, if they do the street, they have to do a full street, as though that's frightful. It's not frightful. It is, we know exactly where the edge of the street is mapped to. We know exactly, they put the fire hydrant in and they put a curb right in front of the fire hydrant. We know exactly where the street should be. This is the responsibility of anybody who builds a new building. This is it. Why you are allowed not to do it for the moment, I have no idea. It's buried in history, but it is a fact that anyone who builds a building has to do a builders and pavers plan, which means build the sidewalk to the legal width, and that is it. This was never done, and what has happened is flooding. Again, Deb, I sent you a picture. Can you send it to members of your committee, please?
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Deb, I just wanted to say also, hearing this and, seeing that, this is, it's kind of a legal issue, and co-op owners shirking their responsibility and to legally do something that's causing damage to the neighborhood by them doing that. I definitely would think this needs to be prioritized higher, just based on that alone and the history we have with this particular. And I trust Rosemary's judgment too. She knows the issue well, and that's kind of where we have these meetings, so we can hear the perspectives of people who have experienced some of these issues before we were even here. So I really feel it needs to be prioritized, just based on what I've heard here tonight, higher.
So Ed, I already, I don't know what thing is, there's so many other things that have much more heavy foot traffic and are in worse condition, like the need maintenance. Like when we spoke last week or last month, we were kind of prioritizing things that needed maintenance over things that were new. So, where would you put it? Which thing would it go ahead of, I guess, is the question. That's the hard one, right?
That is the hard one,
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody in the committee has any suggestions. It's, I don't want to sit here and stare at the thing for 20 minutes before making a decision. You know what I mean?
No,
Right.
it's easy. Ed, you are very generous in your response. Here is the thing, and Deb, I will say to you point blank that budget decisions are tough. Some are easier than others. This has been on the agenda since at least 2014, 2015, 2016, working our way up to the letter from DOT finally, where they said, the only way you're going to get this is if you make it a capital project, okay? They're the ones who put us in the box, okay? We cannot get this done for the community unless it's on the list, okay? And it has been on the list since 2018. That's the problem. And once again, if this committee, other things have come along, I have no doubt about it. No doubt that there are many, I see the list, very many important projects. But something gets knocked off because it's too old, it's been there too long.
Yeah.
DOT hands you a bunch of lies and says, we're talking to the property owner. That is a diversion. It's a catch-22, and I'm offended by it. I am offended. Again, this decision, whether this is on the list or not, is up to your committee. But do not get caught in the catch-22, and do not play the game of, oh, if this is so important, what are you going to knock off your list to take the place? This has been
It's not a
on
game.
for
I'm just gonna-
years.
Rosemary, it's not a game. It's just, it's the fact that we have to find another, to raise it up, you have to move other things down. So, Chris, you raised your hand?
Yeah, couple of questions. Rosemary would probably be the expert on this. I'm trying to visualize this area. Is that muddy mess of that side of the street there by PS 24 and the Spuyten Duyvil Library?
Yeah, I can pull it up.
Thank you. You have the picture? Great.
It's diagonally across the street from it, Chris.
Yeah, I parked there and I know exactly what you're talking about.
Deb,
Also-
do you have the picture, Deb, that you could put up?
This is here, I mean, you've sent me a picture where it's like, it's flooded. Is that the
That's what it
picture?
is all the time.
I was just gonna say that even on the hottest day where we haven't seen rain for weeks on end, there's always water there and it's a mess.
Oh, I'm familiar with it. It's a swamp. Yeah.
That's it. That's it. And this is consistent. In the winter, it's an ice skating rink. And please look at where the fire hydrant is. There's a little curve there. That is where the edge of the street should be. So all of this fear that DOT puts, oh, we have to do a full-fledged, all those trees will be knocked down. No, they won't. The edge of the street is right smack there. In the winter, this is an ice skating rink and nobody can park there. It's mud. In the winter, when people park, they drive out, they create ice as they bring the water out and it freezes. It is a highly dangerous and has been for years and years and years. That's it. Thank you.
Just off the cuff, looking at our list, maybe moving it the first item right after our top 10 instead of that replacing the feasibility study, moving that down for that additional step street, and maybe this could go there. I don't know.
It should be in the top 10.
So, Chris, were you thinking that it would go?
I was thinking that if we
Above
can't
this?
move anything in the top 10, it should replace number 11, move number 11 down.
I think you should replace number 10.
Put number 10 with the corresponding item, I believe it's item 3. And make that number 10.
Well, that was the thing, we wanted to separate out the
Okay,
ADA
I get
ramps.
that, but now we're at a different point in the discussions, right? So in order to make it stand out and to let DOT know that it is a priority for us, I am recommending that we put that item 10 up in item 3. We combine those two. And then we move number 14 up to number 10.
So, wait, Ed, did you just raise your hand?
Oh, no, it was raised before, but I would just suggest put it at number 10 and then drop the list down.
Yeah.
I kind of like what Kelly said, though.
I don't want to touch 3. It's such a priority. Leave that alone. You have too many elderly people going over there. That's
I
the
didn't
way.
say get rid of 3. I said combine that with 3.
Excuse me?
I did not say get rid of 3. I said combine it with 3.
Yeah, I think
How
the.
could a
concern-
sidewalk combine with a foot?
The ADA, because you're rehabilitating the pedestrian.
They are
walkway.
very, very different projects.
Very
Very
different.
extremely different. It's like combining it
Well,
too.
one is the responsibility of the city. The other is the responsibility of the landowner, that apartment building. And
Oh.
frankly, I don't really understand why this isn't something being done by the office to insist that DOT force this to happen. Either basically they violate, as the term is, they violate the landowner and tell them they've got 90 days to do it, or that the DOT will do it and bill them and put a lien on them. I really don't understand why this is actually a capital project at all. This is the responsibility of the landowner, city-wide. You
100%.
must have a sidewalk on your property.
David, this
Yes.
it is Navarro Lopez, the borough commissioner, who after
Former.
years of fighting
Yeah, yes.
254th and 235th said on both streets, we're not going to do anything unless you put them on your list. That is what they said. Once again, this is a catch-22.
Okay, so that's it,
but it's not really a catch-20. But it's not really a catch-22 though, because we can put it on the list and we can also request that they pursue it. And then if they actually start to pursue it, we can take it off the list. If you think that it's a dodge, that, and if we have a letter like that says that it's a capital priority, then we can leave it on as capital priority. I think that it's probably a mistake to combine the feasibility study for West 235th, 236 Henry Hudson Parkway with the work, when we can just simply move it down a notch so that we can squeeze the other thing in at 10. And then if we find that we can get DOT to simply pursue the sidewalk independently, we can just bring the ADA ramp back up to 10. And hopefully some of these other step streets are going to get knocked off anyway.
I think that's the best solution, Deb, what you just said, exactly.
Are we comfortable with that? Just we'll bump the ADA ramps down one. We'll put the sidewalk up, but we'll continue to pursue it just as a matter of law.
Correct, and I think David is correct. That's like, it's staring us right in the face. If they're not doing something they're legally obligated to do, someone should actually call them out on it and put some pressure on them to do it. And it doesn't seem like
Right.
anybody's doing that.
Right, exactly. I don't think that there's been any pressure on it. That was when I brought it up, they hadn't, it seemed like something that they clearly were aware of, but hadn't been pressured on. So, all right, so that's this one, correct? Let's make sure I'm moving the right one. And then that would make that one 10. And then
If anybody has ever fallen on the ice over there and broken a bone or something, it's a legal issue too. So, if there's any reports on any of that happen, then maybe that could speed up the process.
Right, you would think that would actually, that'd be all you needed. Okay. So we go straight from the step streets, which hopefully we'll be able to knock some of these off, to the sidewalks. And Dan, I don't know if Dan's still on the call. To follow up on your point, I think probably the thing we can
Dan
do
left.
is, he leave?
Yes.
To answer his question, is that we'll keep it on the list. We'll pursue them to just simply do it as a matter of law. And that if they either resist it being on the budget list or they don't do it as a matter of law, then we'll ask them to update us, because we have this letter that says that it is a capital budget item. And then we'll ask for, their new response in writing. It's also just a funny time because we're still with an interim DOT commissioner. And so a lot of this, I think, will be on more solid ground too, once we have a permanent DOT commissioner. So anyway, I just wanted to say that. Does that sound like a plan? Yeah.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, good. All right, so we got our ADA ramp. We have our study for a new step street. We have reconstructing sidewalk on east side of Independence Avenue. And then we have our park style lighting around the pedestrian perimeter. Is that okay? That works?
Yeah, you know what? I don't know. Maybe I'm being ADA, but I can't get over the traffic and trans abbreviation. It's just visually disorienting.
It's too racy?
It's visually disorienting to me. Why don't you just spell it out and then leave it alone at that?
Okay. Just trying to make it interesting.
Yeah, right. It doesn't look too official.
Traffic looks wrong to me, so that's why
Yeah.
I feel completely sympathetic to somebody who doesn't want to.
Yo, we're from the traf.
Is big. I'm from the traf.
We're from the traf.
ENS. I mean, TNT almost would make more sense.
You're right.
Okay, so, all right, so I'm gonna stop sharing this one. Are we, this is good, we're good? When the moment comes and they ask me to submit, that's what I'll be submitting. I'll fix the titles. And then the next one is expense. Let me find it. There it is. Share. All right. So this one, we did combine the step streets because it seemed like that was perfectly fine thing to do. So we've got number 1, increase funding for school crossing guards. Number 2, conduct a parking study of the Broadway corridor to better understand future capital expense. So this one, my follow-up item was to go and speak to the merchants. So oh shoot, what's her name? I spoke to Catherine, who's the head of the business improvement district for the Broadway corridor down at 231st. And oh man, I know I should know her name.
It's like Bonard and it's the Kingsbridge bid.
Yeah. And so basically what she said was that a study would be great. However, she has the same concerns that we would have, which is giving that if DOT conducted a study and they found that they needed that in order to address double parking, they needed to install loading zones, or they needed to change parking to add additional parking meters, then they would do those things. And so that it might, which might solve the problems. I mean, it might help. One of the things that was on her mind when she was talking about how it would be a good thing, one of the pluses was that she felt like there are old loading zones and things that are there, signage that is based on previous commercial uses and that might be updated. I mean, honestly, we could probably pursue some of those things as one-offs if we wanted to do that. Ed, I see your hand is up.
Okay, the first thing that jumps out to me when I hear potential loading zones is, okay, so the problem is excessive double parking, correct?
Yes,
right,
particularly on
so-
230th, 231st. Yeah.
So again, I don't know the exact details of this, but it would just, I would just think that if you're gonna impose loading zones, wouldn't that take away all the parking?
Oh,
or-
so I'm not saying that that's something that they would do. And what I'm saying is that if they do a study, that they may come back, they may come back with solutions that will reduce certain kinds of parking in order, like for example, a loading zone would eliminate parking in front of a grocery store, for example. I think all the grocery stores already have loading zones, I think, but that they're going to have ideas of their own about how to address the double parking and that causes the congestion. And do we want to open ourselves up to that?
That's a good question.
Because that's also kind of that's the way to get them to add more parking. Like for example, they can't add more curb, but that one of the ways to increase the amount of available parking, that's what parking meters do. And so they might say, well, let's add some parking meters onto the side streets so that there's during the daytime from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. or something, so that there's more turnover so that when people are coming to shop, I'm not saying they're doing that, but that's the kind of thing, that's the way they're going to be thinking about it, is how can we increase the amount of available parking spaces for people during certain kinds of use? And it could be that trucks need better parking at the curb, or that merchants need additional parking for people to pull in, and the things that are in their basket are specialized zones or certain kinds of parking meters, mostly because it's commercial, you know?
Yeah, it's a tough call. You know, you want trucks to have the availability to park and unload at these stores to service the businesses. But is it at the cost of removing parking from people who shop there, which probably is scarce to begin with? So it's an unknown because you don't know what they're gonna do. So
Right.
I don't know what anybody else's opinion on this. It's a tough call as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, Rosemary, I see your hand up. Is that for this?
Yes, yes, yes. I just, a simple question, why do we have it as our second top expense budget request for DOT to do a parking study? I've never seen, I don't understand, what is the purpose of the study? What's the purpose of the parking study? If DOT sees a problem with parking, they are well equipped to do any study they want and inflict their results on us with one meeting. Why do we have it as an expense budget request with all the needs in this community? Why are we requesting money to conduct a study for DOT? Let them do their own study. They're capable of doing whatever they want to do. I just don't understand why.
This would be for them to do the study. I mean, to be clear, the purpose of the study, Rosemary, we discussed at the last meeting, which is that there's substantial congestion along the Broadway corridor, and so it makes it really difficult to get to businesses, and it probably contributes to some degree to the accidents and things that happen as people are trying to get around parked cars.
It's not, why is that a parking?
Let me finish.
Go ahead.
So the concern is about all of the double parking that's happening. It's clearly that there's extra need for additional parking, and that how do we get more parking? Like, and the thing that we discussed at the last call was, is this a matter of are people coming from short distances? Do they live around bus routes and they're not taking the bus because the buses are moving too slowly? Is it that they could be walking, but they're not walking for, what's the reason that or are they coming from quite a ways away? Or are they coming from Yonkers and they're just parking near us to get on the train? Are they parking near us to get on the Metro North? So it's like trying to understand where these cars are coming from, what the need is, how long they park. Are they parking overnight? Are they parking just during the day? Are they just parking for a few minutes and they just need more space to stand? We just don't have any real information about what's causing these kinds of delays, but we know that for sure that it's a concern in terms of our traffic and transportation health, that Broadway corridor definitely could use some improvement. So that was what we were discussing last month.
Deb, can I just interject for a second?
Totally.
Yeah, Rosemary, the reason it's a high priority for our committee is the abbreviated, everything Deb just said, but the abbreviated version is that we are desperate for parking in that area. There's parking is not available in that area, and that's why there's a lot of congestion. So that's why it's a high priority, because it's probably the most needed thing in our community is parking, and it's just not available at this time. So that's why it's on our list and high prioritized.
Yeah, I can't think of anything that people want more consistently across the whole community board than more parking. And so what can be done? David, you got your hand up?
Yes, given that you went to Catherine to ask her whether she thought a parking study was needed, on behalf of the bid, I wonder who asked for the study. I mean, I go down there all the time, and by car and by bike, and yeah, double parking can occasionally be inconvenient, but I just don't see this parking as an issue. And I wonder where the question came from.
That's right.
What I think it's pretty obvious that there's a parking shortage along the Broadway corridor.
Who requested it? If it wasn't Catherine, the head of the bid, I wonder who requested it.
There's no wonder. I mean, I brought it up as a possible priority based on the kinds of things that were suggested by we were looking for expense budget items, and this seemed like the kind of thing that we always talk about. We have an obvious need for more parking. So, I mean, this is something that I wanted to bring to the committee as a possible item. And Catherine,
All right, let me summarize by
yeah,
saying that I question whether it's needed at all, and certainly not a high priority over things like safe step streets and curbs and whatnot on our whole list. I would definitely not have it as our second priority, not even close.
Chris, you had your hand up. Were you?
Just that many may remember, I don't know if you do, DOT used to maintain and run a municipal lot over there.
Yeah.
And then they were only too anxious to get rid of it, turned it over to a private operator who ran it into the ground, and hence we have the Broadway Mall there now. So DOT started this over there, and yeah, it is congested. I drive, you got to go in these side streets, which already have meters on them, but I find parking.
I think the community board was also involved with the reduction, the elimination of that municipal parking. I mean, I wasn't here and I can't, I mean, Rosemary probably knows better than I do exactly what the order of events were, but that it seemed like there was crime. When I read old minutes, it seemed like there was a concern that it was inadequately used and there was crime at the time when they were having that conversation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
Deb,
great to have it now.
also, not for nothing, we, we're kind of rehashing the same discussion we had at the last meeting about this. We went over this, and
Mhm.
if you recall, I am chair of public safety, and I have something there joint with this committee at the number one. I would have replaced this for the number one, to be honest with you. So that's how important I feel parking is. It's the number one complaint I hear in residents from this neighborhood with regards to traffic. Number one is parking.
Yeah.
So something needs to be done so that it's very high priority in my estimation. And that's I think how we arrived here.
Mhm. Agreed. So Chris or Kelly or David, like, I mean, I think it would be good to keep it on the list. And I have no trouble having it be high on the list. Does anybody feel strongly that it either should be completely removed or that it should just come down on the list?
I believe that it really should come off, but certainly down below repairing the step streets, the railings on the step streets, the lampposts, the pedestrian connection to the Putnam Greenway. I think those are much more important. I do not think the parking situation is, I believe, to be at worst inconvenient. I don't think it's a danger. I don't think it's a health hazard. I don't think it stops people from shopping in the community. So I would put it below all these Step Street and street access, pedestrian bike connection.
I would say that just to push back on the idea that it's not a safety concern, I would say that because we don't have adequate parking, we won't give up a single parking space, which is why we often don't have some of we don't pull in pedestrian crosswalks. We're hesitant to do any kind of bus lanes or things like that, or bus bump outs, because they impact parking, which we cannot afford to do because we have just so many cars. I mean, and I know that there's a argument about induced demand and all, that if you make space for cars, you're just going to have more cars. But we have a set level of cars that we can't support now. And so that, like, figuring out what needs to be done to make it, to make it so that we can function, it seems really important to me.
Okay, Deb, you asked the question earlier.
Yeah.
where we would like to see it move. I'm with David. I don't think it needs to be there, but if it does remain, I think it should go down to the bottom of the list.
Okay, so it's for it to go to the bottom. Chris, and Mary Ellen, do you have,
Yes. I always find parking when I drive down on Broadway. I pay the meter, you have the app, you plug it in, you pay your 50 cents and you keep it moving, your 25 or 50 cents and you keep it moving. Part of the issue is that people are not pulling up to the curb, so they're double parking and trying to avoid paying that meter fee, which to me just defies any logic, but so be it.
right, so it's also an enforcement issue.
Right.
Yeah. And that's the other thing too, Ed, is that Catherine's main concern was really just enforcement. Kelly, you are supporting of it going down. David supporting of it coming down. Chris, where are you on this?
I could see it going down.
Would you take it to the bottom as well, or would you?
Whatever, I'll go with the majority on this. I'm fine with it moving to the bottom. I'd be okay with that.
Mary Ellen? Are you there?
Yeah, I'd be okay with it going down more.
So is there, so can we, I mean, we could put it above 7, I guess. Above the feasibility study for the pedestrian and bicycle connections. That seems to be kind of happening anyway as part of the DEP stuff.
Yeah, what numbers when we,
This is actually all of them. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 is all of them. The parking study is currently number 2. And so I was proposing moving it to 6. And then that would bring the step streets up. And then I'm just gonna keep trying to get the
yeah,
step
I
streets
had
off
to,
of
yeah,
this list.
no, the railings, all that makes sense. I would
Ed,
put it below railings, because railings, people gotta hold on and.
yeah, like I feel like I agree. Like I think the maintenance and repair stuff should be a high priority, but also hopefully we can get this stuff knocked off the list. We just need to get DOT inspecting it. So all this stuff has been submitted for them to get out there but I want to keep it on the list until we know for sure that they're going to do the repair. So hopefully they'll do that
Yeah.
over the summer.
Sounds good to me.
Ed, your hand's up.
Oh, I didn't realize my hand was up. No, obviously I don't agree. I would push it up to number 1, but I'm not gonna buck the committee. If the majority says that they want to move it down, and I think your compromise is okay. I just, my thing is, I hear from a lot of people about TNT issues, and I've never heard anybody say that their biggest, they're really concerned with repainting those railings. All I hear is they have issues.
Parking. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm good. If that's the way the committee wants to go, I'm not going to sit here and buck the majority and litigate this to the last detail. So,
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize it was repaint. I thought they were.
well, I was being
No, I thought it was, I thought they were broken railings that, I didn't realize it was repaint.
Repaint and reseat the stone steps. That's number 3.
I was
and
being
then we-
slightly
yeah.
snarky there, but
Hopefully
It's
it'll
not
all come
me.
back up. And it's new. And- okay. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Okay, so is that our list? Yay, so I think we need to do a vote, correct? David?
No, we don't have to, but it's advisable.
Okay, so let's put them both together, I guess, since we just for the sake of time. All those opposed to accepting these 2, actually, before we do a vote, I do need to add the titles. Is that should be fine, correct? Are we comfortable with me adding the titles? I don't want to have to vote.
I think you can do that, Deb.
Okay,
Yes, you can add those titles. It
if
looks
everyone's
funny as a-
comfortable. Okay, I
as a
just want to make
trap.
sure.
just leave out the traf and trans and we're good.
All right, so.
You like the trap.
Trap and trans, yeah. So is anyone opposed to accepting the capital and expense budget priorities that that we've discussed this evening? These two lists. Anybody abstaining? Check my. So then it looks like it is unanimous. I just want to do a head count. So it's Chris, Kelly, Mary Ellen, David, Ed. That's everybody, right? Yeah. Okay, all right, perfect. All right, well, so that's good. That's the one big thing. And then the other thing, next item on the agenda is Bailey Avenue. I just want to come back to Bailey Avenue and discuss kind of next steps. So we met in December, January, and February. In December, we discussed the whole corridor from Van Cortlandt Park to Kingsbridge Road. And the community members came and they expressed their concerns that speeding, double parked cars, and turning cars at intersections made it unsafe for pedestrians. And that also these conditions were causing bikes and scooters, e-scooters, to ride on the sidewalk. The intersections of Van Cortlandt Avenue South, West 238th Street, West 230th Street, and West 225th Street were kind of the list of the most dangerous. And the intersections of West 238th and Bailey and Van Cortlandt Avenue West and Bailey were the two highest priorities, which is why we then kind of focused to one meeting on Van Cortlandt Avenue South and then one meeting on West 238th Street. So then in January, we discussed Van Cortlandt Avenue South. The major points of concern for the community were left turns from all directions, and this is all just coming from the minutes. Traffic flow is unruly and leads to erratic behavior by drivers. No controlled stops from the slip lanes from the Deegan or from eastbound Van Cortlandt Avenue South. Pedestrian crosswalks are too wide and too difficult to navigate with turn traffic, and honking from the backed up traffic on Bailey Avenue. We spoke to DOT and they said they were unaware of any unsafe conditions at this intersection. They were willing to look into it if we wanted them to. They have recently changed the timing of the traffic signal. So they increased the green light duration for northbound Bailey Avenue, which has improved the afternoon congestion, according to the 50th precinct. So we reached out to ask about that. So then the other thing we agreed upon was that the access to Van Cortlandt Park is really dangerous there. And because the Deegan northbound on-ramp has vehicles that are already up to speed at the point where pedestrians would cross, and there's no crosswalk or sidewalk to the park or signage that pedestrians may be crossing. Van Cortlandt Park Alliance is interested in working with the city on this intersection. And New York City DOT said that they would be open to anything that other committees, like the Alliance reached out to them, or New York State DOT expressed interest in working on it, that they would partner with them. And then in February, we focused on the intersection of West 238th Street and Bailey Avenue. Community members highlighted the following issues. Again, it was turning cars, failing to yield, speeding cars, cars cutting the turn, and then double parked cars, particularly on Bailey Avenue and at West 238th Street, east of the intersection, so on West 238th itself. And then pedestrians jaywalking to run to the bus, and traffic from the BJ's rooftop parking on West 238th Street. So those were, it's just kind of just to bring us all up to speed on what we talked about. And it feels to me like we should do a resolution, if honestly, like that if we should do a resolution to request like a safety study of either the intersections specifically or the corridor, to address the turning cars and the pedestrian safety. So I wanted to get a sense from the committee, though, whether that was something we wanted to put into a resolution, or if we wanted to have some other measure. I mean, certainly there's a safety issue on Bailey. Ed.
All right, so, I mean, initially when you kicked this off, you mentioned that DOT stated that they were unaware of any dangerous situations. So I'm always leery of just handing over basically a blank check to DOT to do what they wish with an area, unless we have, bona fide evidence that there is some type of safety issue going on. So, I mean, I know we could probably, scan the data and find a few scattered accidents over the years. But, even with regards to that, I think when we start looking at any data, we need to look a little deeper at the data and find out about accident reports from NYPD and such, just to find out what the specific causes of these are, because they may not, the causes of the accidents may not fit the bill of the prescription we're trying to fill for some of these things. So just the fact that DOT says that they're unaware of any dangerous situations, it almost feels like we'd be jumping the gun to request something from DOT when we know their history is, I feel a lot of these, so-called remedies are there's situations that are looking for crises to justify other plans the DOT may have for these areas. So I'm really, unless we can come up with some solid evidence that there's been some type of safety issue here, which I don't see at this point, I would not be for proposing that the DOT do any type of a study where they can then just unilaterally move to start rearranging our neighborhood and maybe putting a space station there, or whatever they do. So it's like, I don't know. I'm just, we've been burned a bunch of times on this in the past, and unless I see overwhelming evidence that there is a safety issue, I would not be for moving forward on this unless we can come up with additional data that supports taking a chance like that.
No, I hear you. I mean, the original reason for discussing Bailey Avenue was because the data was there when we looked at our community board as a whole. Bailey Avenue is right up there with, it's not as bad as Broadway in terms of crashes and injuries, but like I can share a crash mapper here. I think this is where we started when we first started thinking about this. So this is just a visualizer for the city accident reports. So it just kind of shows where your worst corridors are. To Ed's point, it doesn't indicate the specifics about it, but like what the specific conditions were, but we can see that a lot of them are happening at intersections. And so, I pulled up the last 5 years, so 2017 to 2022, we've had 153 crashes just on this part of Bailey from Kingsbridge Road to, goes to Van Cortlandt Park South. I just isolated it. 12 cyclists have been injured, 53 pedestrians have been hit by cars, and 133 pedestrians have been injured. Those are the injuries, those are the crashes, 153 crashes with injuries, and then there were 343 with no injury. So, it's like when they just do the injuries, turn that back on again. So the thing that the police reports don't always say exactly what the cause was. When they put it here, it's like nothing. But driver inattention and failure to yield is certainly one of the main ones. Like if DOT looked at this, they would do a study to say, okay, what was the cause? They would do that deep dive that you're talking about of saying, okay, or is it at intersections? Is it seniors? Is it children? I mean, one thing we do know is that this intersection is got a lot of seniors and children that live along it. Just because it has a high volume of households along it, and so there is that too. If you want to, Chris, do you want me to leave this up, or is it you want me to pull it down? I know you've got a comment.
No, I don't need you to leave it up.
Okay.
My concern is a lot of what Ed just said. I'd be concerned that we get a sequel to a horror movie that we already have in front of us, known as the redesign of Riverdale Avenue. We give this to DOT. They're not big on putting left turn signals in and everything. We'll have all these left turn bays, painting traffic all over the place. And that would be a worry to me that we'd have two DOT redesign projects in front of us and everyone up in arms.
Ed, is your hand still up, or is this new? Is it from before?
Sorry, Deb, that was from before. I'll take it down.
Okay, no worries. Rosemary, you're next.
I'd like to, if your committee wants to go first, Deb, it's entirely up to you. I don't mind speaking now, but if you want to leave it to your committee members first, that's okay.
No,
If
it's
you
fine.
want me to speak, is it okay
Yeah,
if I go now?
Yeah, no, you can go.
Okay, so I want to reiterate and kind of endorse what Ed says and Chris said. I remember quite vividly Broadway corridor, and put aside what was planned, what was eventually done. I'm focusing simply on the justification DOT put forward was, look at all these accidents. And of course, in those days, we got all the police reports, and I don't understand why this committee can't get all the police reports. I read them all. It was shocking. You know how many people died on Broadway because one man was a young man took a skateboard down Mashalou Avenue and went through a light and was hit by a car. Well, that's not a reason to change Broadway. There were people who died jaywalking between cars that were pulling out. They were backing up. They were crushed between two cars. There were 2 deaths as a result of that. In other words, the accidents stated, the numbers stated, did not bear a relationship to the solution that DOT put forward. Again, I'm going to agree with Ed and Chris. There should be a deep dive, whatever. There should be an understanding. It's not a numbers game. You don't know if they are DUIs, DWIs, which has nothing to do with the structure of the street at all. You need to understand exactly why people were injured, why there were crashes before a major restructure of a street goes forward. Thank you.
David, you're next.
Yes, I would note that Broadway, Mashalou Avenue, and Riverdale Avenue, one thing they have in common is, well, 2 things that they have in common is, one, we didn't like the committee and the board did not like them at all. And they were all projects that DOT did on their own without our request. This is different. There was an issue identified by a member of this committee and members of the community saying that Bailey Avenue and many of the crossings are a problem. I think that if we ask DOT to address the problem that we have surfaced, I think we might be in a better position and would be able to work with DOT rather than having something foisted upon us someday that we may not have necessarily requested. Thank you.
I mean, David, you've got me thinking too that if we did ask for something, we could ask for the process similar to what they followed on Mashalou, the other part of Mashalou on CB7, where they did community outreach, where they did a whole, we've identified that there's a lot of accidents here, and then they went to the community and said, what do you see? Let's go intersection by intersection, strip by strip. What would you do differently? Because maybe it is just signage. Maybe it's left turn bays. Maybe it's, whatever.
Could
A
be.
lot of it the community seemed to be very concerned about the intersections. And so that would be something we could ask for specifically.
We can ask for anything. And I think asking is a better stance to approach our concerns about our roads in our community.
Jody, you're next.
Just to repeat, yes, what Ed and Chris and Rosemary said, David, a member of the TNT committee, did request something about Palisade Avenue and Cape and look what we got. And it cost another $250,000 to fix it. So I'm gonna just repeat what I said before. I'm quite familiar with that intersection. It used to be part of my commute. And I think you're right, Deb, that maybe it's an education and outreach campaign, not a, what do you want us to do about this? But again, people are crossing, they're jaywalking to catch the buses because who knows when they're gonna come. They're not paying attention to the lights, the drivers are distracted. You said driver inattention was a cause of one of the accidents. That's not going to be solved by DOT infrastructure or signage. So I think maybe we do need to understand more about what is actually going on there without asking DOT to do anything, because we will get some crazy infrastructure that's just going to make it worse. I got to say, what they did at Knowles Crescent and K-Park is a disaster. I mean, it made it safer for cars, but it's a pedestrian nightmare. And I could see that happening on Bailey because there's so many bus stops on there too. So I just think we need some driver and pedestrian education. And again, with the cyclist accidents, unless we have those police reports that say that a cyclist ran a light or was going the wrong way, you don't know if it was that or a driver or a pedestrian who was in the wrong. So it just seems like we're in a, it just seems weird to me that to ask DOT to do something when we didn't like what they proposed for Independence Avenue. We didn't like what they proposed for Palisade and K-Park. We didn't like Broadway. We didn't like Marshalloo. Like the reality is why would they do something that we like when they haven't done it before? So I would just caution you, because if it doesn't solve the problem, which is community people not paying attention when they're crossing or driving, we'll just have another big mess.
Okay, all right, thanks, Jody. Dan Paternak, you're next.
Hi, guys. The first point, I just want to, and I'm sure everybody knows, Bailey Avenue is a crucial artery to this part of the community board. The amount of traffic that it has to handle for a variety of reasons. And I'm very apprehensive about giving anything to DOT these days unless we ask for something specific. As a point, our board rescinded a resolution because we were concerned that DOT wouldn't do what we asked because it wasn't in their toolbox. So I wouldn't, quite frankly, give a blank check to DOT for just about anything these days. Second, from what I'm hearing from the members and Rosemary, it sounds to me like it's a very good approach to go through the police reports and actually identify what the specific issues here are before you engage DOT in any other planning aspect. I mean, let's get the information first and figure out what's causing these accidents at the intersections or at any other points before you just have a resolution, giving them a blank check. And, quite frankly, that's what I think is probably the most informed approach and the best approach to work with DOT. First, get the information and figure out what, if anything, what tools can be used before we engage them and ask them. And again, we keep coming back to the same problem with DOT. They might not give us what we want if we present them with something. So let's maybe work from a planning perspective here and just start with the information and the raw data. And I'll end there.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the approach, Dan. I just think the issue with DOT is that that they're going to do all of that work themselves, and that they have professionals who know what they're doing and can align it with all of the various highway, city, state laws and requirements for the street. And that the types of things that they suggest, like for Palisade and K-Park, it had a very low number of accidents that happened there. But on Bailey, we know that there are crashes that happen on Bailey, and that yes, you should dig down and identify what the causes are, but that I think that that's something for professionals to do, and that for the committee to do that we would do a disservice of not digging as deeply as they would do it. And then in the end, making a resolution that they're no more likely to follow because they would still be doing their own work. So
Deb, I would
that's
just
my-
say that our initial research and our initial deep dive is not going to preclude DOT from doing their own once we actually engage them.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. It would be kind of unnecessary.
Oh, no, I think it's completely necessary for our board to actually inform ourselves.
So I see Ed's hand is up. Ed?
Yeah, I had to push back on that a little about the trust the professionals approach, because I think that's what the contention is about this whole issue, is that we have lost trust in our DOT, that they are not going to provide a result that's satisfactory to the community with whatever work they do, as is evidenced by some of their past projects. So, I think we should definitely, as Dan and, a few of us have suggested, is look into some of the causes of this, and even the meeting that pretty much precipitated this. I didn't get the feeling that this was an overwhelming cry from the community like some other of our meetings to get a specific problem fixed. I mean, there was a smattering of people that came out. A few people said, "Oh, this is a problem area," but it didn't seem like there was any imperative crisis going on that warranted us to do this. It almost felt very inorganic and manufactured to me. I don't see a crisis here, and I certainly don't, at this point, trust this agency to find a remedy to something that almost appears as a manufactured crisis to me. And the last thing I'll say on this is that all the maps and the accidents and all this stuff, this has been a great conversation. It's flushed out a lot of things, but I think the opening sentence of where you started this pretty much sums up the whole issue. And you said that DOT was unaware of any dangerous situations. So I think that says a lot. And I think, all the nuances that we've flushed out are important, but if DOT is unaware of any dangerous situations, it's not on their radar to do anything about it. And I'll leave it at that.
Right. I would say that that's because the one of the roles of the community board is to be experts as much as we can in our community. And so DOT is a Bronx borough-wide agency, and they are committed to public safety. And so if we say to them, we think that there's a safety issue here, that they would do a study and say if they agree or not. And so if there's not a safety issue, they would say, okay, there's not a safety issue. But that I think it's disturbing that we can see that there's accidents happening, and that people came out. It wasn't hundreds of people, but it's still like we have had fewer people than that who've requested stop signs and different in treatments. That's not an unusually small amount. It's just kind of more of the state of the public participation in community board discussions, I think. I don't know. I just think we do have a responsibility if we see something to say something. But I will leave it at that. Mary Ellen, I think you're next.
Yeah, I just think it's horrible that if they're gonna ignore that it's so dangerous there not to do anything when they made such a mess of Palisade and K-Park Street on their own will there. And they need to do something about it. I think we should really push them to do what they have to do to make that a safer place. If there are constant crashes and people get hit and everything, I think that should be a major priority of DOT. And I guess it's us as a community committee to really push that if we're thinking of the community.
Thank you. Kelly?
Deb, I don't think there's a there. And as I recall some of the discussions, there was an issue with people saying that at certain intersections, they were not unable to cross the street, but part of it was people didn't understand that those lights were controlled and that there was turning mechanisms in place that assisted pedestrians in crossing the street, right? And to Dan, Rosemary, Ed's point, I think we need the raw data instead of just looking at what's in somebody's computer system, right? We need to be able to see what has happened to cause these accidents before we go to DOT. And that's just basic knowledge, right? We need to inform ourselves before we can actually make a request to DOT. So I don't think that there really is a there. In my experience in crossing Bailey Avenue, I have seen people come out from parked cars. I've seen people cross in the middle of the street. I've seen people with young children crossing in the middle of the street. On Van Cortlandt Avenue, I've seen someone crossing between Broadway and I forget the street where Visitation, between Visitation, the street with Visitation and the street with Broadway, Putnam and whatever that next street is. And they had a toddler crossing in the middle of that street to get over to Van Cortlandt Park. So it's about people educating themselves and doing the right thing, right? So we need to educate people to assist them, both drivers and pedestrians. But I don't think that there is a there when it comes to Bailey Avenue.
So when you say you don't think that there's a there, are you saying you don't believe there's a safety problem on Bailey Avenue?
I don't think there's a safety problem on the magnitude in which you're suggesting, you're intimating. Okay, what I'm saying is I would need to see more information as to what has caused those accidents. Are they just fender benders? The graphics that you just put up, it said right there that there are 129 undefined. I don't know what those undefined.
Those are injuries. Those are injuries, Kelly.
I don't know what they are. Okay, so I would need to see the reports. That's all I think we're saying. So I think we're putting the cart before the horse.
Okay. So David?
Yes, Deb, members of our community, maybe not 200 like some meetings we've had, but members of our community came before us and said they're concerned about the safety of Bailey Avenue. You then went and found some statistics on I think you said 129 incidents or injuries.
153 in the last 5 years.
Okay, I'm sorry, well, 153. That suggests to me that we have a responsibility to at least listen to our community. You did a good work in getting some numbers to substantiate it. I think that now what we need to do is craft a specific request of what we want DOT to do to address those two concerns. I think that this is not just anecdotal evidence. It sounds like you found real evidence. I think we should pursue it. I think you have the right idea. Thank you.
Jody, you got your hand up.
Oh, thank you. So I think that, one thing is 238th Street is not the source of the whole problems. I just saw your screenshot very quickly and I'm on my phone, so it's kind of small. But it looked
I can put it back up.
it looked like some of the stuff was Deegan related on Bailey,
No,
that's kind of tricky
well,
at the Deegan. And then
Well, that's why I tried to
also-
find it out.
And then also some of these things are not even at intersections, although yes, there are bigger blurbs at intersections.
Yeah.
Can you just, I missed it. How many incidents are at this 238th and Bailey? Like, is that the 153 number?
That's this number right here. So
What, can you tell me what that is?
okay, let me
I'm sorry if
start
you
again.
showed it already.
No, it's fine. So kind of this number. So in the last 5 years, that particular intersection has had 16 crashes.
In 5 years.
So yeah, so 3 every year, one injury of a cyclist, 8 pedestrians, 11 motorists. Those are injuries. And then it's had 17 others without injuries.
Okay, so maybe what Kelly is saying is close to what the numbers are saying, that 0 life has risks, and unless you know what those issues were, whether they were what she mentioned, people crossing between cars, people DUI, for, yes, it's terrible people that anybody got hurt, but you can't build infrastructure to prevent DUIs and people crossing against the light and drivers blowing lights. You can't do that unless you have enforcement. And for David, and for Mary Ellen, I don't think it's ignoring the community if the community board, where it seems like the majority of community board members are saying, let's find out what those 30-something crashes were and what the cause of them were. Maybe there really isn't an infrastructure solution for DOT. Maybe it is just an outreach and education about street crossing safety. So I think that it's just an interim step to ask for those police reports so that you can see exactly what happened in each incident, and then you'll be better informed. Because once you request something from DOT, that's like opening the door. It's like letting the vampire in your house. Once you let them in, you know.
Well, but I would push back that the DOT, they are the people who are, they're the agencies responsible for the safety of the streets, and that they, you know, if there's this actual issue, they're going to be the ones who are best positioned to investigate it and to have look at the toolbox and say, here are the things that are the most appropriate.
Yeah, but I'm trying to be respectful towards you for being an advocate for DOT, but the reality is that the community and the community board are better experts at the nuances of what's going on in our neighborhood. DOT has metrics they have to meet. They have, you know, they have X amount of bike lanes to put in. They have X amount of concrete to put in. They have metrics to meet. And I think that we have to just be sensitive and realistic about that, that yes, although they're trying to make the streets safe, they do things because they have to hit targets. And having been funded by sanitation, I had to do a lot of stupid stuff to hit my numbers. So I suggest caution, an intermediate step of trying to find out what those are. And if they're saying it's not dangerous, it doesn't meet their criteria. So let's investigate and see if the community board can do something else. Like,
so they're not saying that it's, just to be clear, they're not saying that it's not dangerous. They're saying,
oh, I thought that's how you
I don't
started.
know where to get that from.
no, that's not what they were saying. They were saying, like, you know, I was like, is this something already on your radar? Is this something you're already thinking about? And they're like, this is not something on our radar. This is not something we're already thinking about. So they're not saying it's not dangerous. They're just saying they're not paying attention to it, which I think of that as somewhat par for the course. Like, they're not going to know every individual dangerous avenue in the Bronx. And that part of our role is to say, okay, where are our most vulnerable people and what can we do? Like, and so that's why this particular stretch seemed like in our district, like the best place to start, because of the turning traffic, particularly coming off of the Deegan, makes it difficult for pedestrians. And they came out and said said as much.
But I'm sorry. I thought that this was about just 238th Street and not the entire strip of Bailey. My understanding from the last time I was on was that people specifically complained about 238th and Bailey, and not the entire strip of Bailey. So I would just be cautious. It's better to take an extra step than to get in the same position we were at with Independence Avenue and all the other places that people mentioned, is to just do a little research on our own. You know, I just think that sounds like great advice from the majority of the board members who spoke up. And as a member of the public, I think that's a good approach.
Just so I don't think it's the majority, because it's we're evenly split between whether we should do a resolution or whether we should get more investigations. I guess the question I've got is if I put in a request to the 50th to ask them for more specific police reports and stuff, is that actually going to change the way Ed or Chris or Kelly would approach this?
I don't know. I have to see what the evidence, Deb. That's what we're asking you to obtain.
Well, not necessarily. I mean,
Yes, it does. Yes, you're saying you don't know if it's going to change my narrative, right?
Right.
And I'm saying to you is we get the information and we can read what's in the report, then that may change something. But right now, as it stands, I am not willing to put forth a resolution for that.
Mhm,
No.
okay. Ed?
Ditto, so just what she said.
Okay. Chris?
I feel the same way.
But do you feel like if you got more information,
feel that-
you
I
might
feel
want to
I've-
do something, or do you feel like you wouldn't want to touch it in any case? I mean, because I think that's
Oh,
also.
no, I'd like to get information in front of me, see the stats on what's occurred on Bailey, and it could very well change what I'm putting forth tonight. Right now, I'm not willing to go for a resolution though on it.
Okay. So then I guess what I'll do is I'll put in a request to get the traffic, the accident data for the last 5 years for Bailey, and then we can distribute it to the committee. And then we can, if we get it and we, in a timely manner, we can bring this back to the discussion next month. Does that make sense? I would like to do something
Makes
on this if
sense.
we can.
Makes
Yeah.
sense.
Okay. So the last 5 years. Got it. All right, so that's it for Bailey Avenue. Any old business?
Yeah,
Rosemary, you trying to raise your hand?
yes, I tried to raise my hand. Yeah, old business on the
Okay.
rescindment of the Independence Avenue. Remember the rescindment?
Okay.
Have you, has there been any communication back from DOT? Did it accomplish what you thought it would accomplish or hoped it would accomplish?
Well,
Any reply from DOT to our resolution rescinding our resolution?
no, I mean, it was submitted by the board office, and nothing has happened on Independence Avenue. So I take both of those things as good as good signs. So yeah.
Okay, so no, there was no communication back from DOT to us.
I think we have I think we have a login number, but that's it. That's it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I'll double check the. Matt, you got your hand up. Old business?
I don't know whether it's old business or new business, Palisades and Kapok.
Mm-hmm. I guess that's old business.
Okay, so the inquiry that I've raised in an email that got forwarded to you today was like 4 questions. First of all, has in fact there been remediation to the original condition? And like, how much did this all cost? Is, labor, supplies, equipment, concrete, to have the studies that were done, personnel time that was devoted to the decision to do whatever was being done on Palisade and Kapok? How much did that all cost? Does anyone have any idea? Because I think that the community should know about that, because it ended up being a huge cost, I would imagine, to do what was done in the first place without really fully listening to the community. And then second of all, to remediate it partially was a lot of money. And I'd certainly like to know how much that cost.
Yeah, no, I don't really have a sense. It's done I believe it was done out of their regular maintenance budget. So it's not like it was a allocated like capital expense or anything like that. So that I don't know how much it costs. Jody, are you going to raise your hand to tell me you know how much it costs? If anybody knows, it would be Jody, and she's got the chops to find that out.
It's only because people think I'm 311. Oh.
You are 3. You're better. You're 411 or 611.
So I have the old business. Matt, I heard from Lou, who is working directly with Keith Kalb, interim commissioner Kalb.
Mhm.
And he said that the original project cost 650,000 and that the redo cost 250,000. So that was what Lou told me he had heard. And then the second thing, if you haven't been down there, they did cut the curb line back and made it, instead of it bumping out past the drains, they moved the curb line back so it is in line with the drains. They removed some concrete, not as much as they had presented, but they did take some of the concrete out. They were talking originally to that group about permeable paving and permeable asphalt, but they said they cannot do that now. And 2727 asked them for an estimate of what it would cost the building to do the curb. Remember, we had talked about raising the curb line. So they asked DOT to give them a quote for fixing the curb in front of their building to prevent water from easily coming in. They have sandbags there now. So some work was done. It was done very quickly, but there's not been much going on there. So I don't know what their planting plan is. The other thing that they did not do is they did not put any inflow or outflows in. So the water still will run along the curb. It's just not as much concrete that will be sheeting water down as well. So that's my update on that.
Oh, Jody,
but
before
I
you go
do-
on to the next one, is
Okay.
is stop sign been replaced there? Mary Ellen sent me a photo of the stop sign that was missing.
I don't know, because they had moved the curb line, they had taken all the signs out and they had also put up like barricades, and I think they had a temporary sign further up, but I haven't been past there this week.
Okay.
Because there's
It's a
lesser
temporary
selling
construction
done in the park.
site.
Yeah,
Ah.
so thank you so much, Jody.
You're welcome,
for
Matt.
all of that information. I really appreciate that. And so it was a $900,000 project, ill-advised in all.
Okay. Anything, so that's any other old business? Any new business?
I just had a question.
Yeah.
That's why I was joking about being 311, because people call me with problems and I'm like, tell the community board. I did have some residents on Adrian Avenue complain to me about the traffic there in Marble Hill. And I had forwarded them the agenda, but the meeting date had changed. I think once or twice, so I didn't see them on here. Did they contact the community board at all about that?
Not that I am aware of. I have to catch up on my email from today, but I can check with Kira. It's traffic, they're concerned about traffic safety or double parked cars or?
They live on Adrian Avenue, and we had been texting about the new building going up, Timber Equities. And they said that, oh, the traffic over here on Adrian Avenue and Marble Hill is really bad. What's being done about it? And I was like, tell the community board, here's the meeting, come do it in new business.
Right.
So I was just curious if they followed through or not. So it sounds like they didn't.
I don't think so. But I can double check. I'll check with Kira. Okay. All right. And then
Thank you.
Rosemary, yeah, no, totally. Thank you, Jody. It's good to see your name, if not your face. Rosemary.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I'm open. On the sidewalk restaurants, the open street restaurants, you know, that
I saw
issue
your email.
that the court threw everything out.
Threw their neg deck out.
Excuse me?
Threw their neg deck out?
When they threw the neg deck out, they threw out the proposal because you cannot go forward if you didn't do the appropriate environmental review. So it's stopped now.
Well,
They have
well,
to,
they have to either redo the EAS or they have to submit and decide to do the EIS if they.
hey, there
decide to
you
agree.
go. And that is why I'm coming to you. Or the chair of the board gave this issue to TNT. So that's why I'm coming here to ask the following. When it comes to the new, that's exactly what I need to know, and what I think your committee and the community board needs to know. What do they plan to do in the face of the court throwing out their work? Are they going to do another EAS? Are they going to do an EIS, go right to an EIS? What is their plan for rectifying their mistake? I will just, that this committee, just from the court decision, I adore these few words. The court said DOT gave a baseless declaration of its own omnipotence. That's what DOT did by doing a negative declaration on this entire program. So going forward, are they going to do an EAS? Are they going to go right to an EIS? What is their plan? It would be good to know. And the chair of our board gave it to this committee. So there you go, Deb. You're it. Ted, you're it.
Okay, Tag, I'm
Okay.
it.
We know what
So-
those are.
So yeah, let me explain for a second.
Thank you.
What all of that acronym soup is. So an EAS is an environmental assessment. And what that is a requirement when you're going to make big changes, and like to administrative and agency rules, I think is really where that comes from. But that if you're going to do some sort of big impact like this, where you're going to change the way that restaurants can use the street space, then you have to do this environmental assessment. Part of the environmental assessment, the way the big agencies, if when you do the environmental assessment, you can decide that you have what's called a negative declaration. And the negative declaration is that there is no negative impact from this action. And so therefore you don't need to do an EIS, an environmental impact survey. The environmental impact study is required if there are going to be big impacts to a change in a rule or process that your agency is doing. I know this as an example of Jerome Park Reservoir. The DEP wanted to change the levels of water in the North Basin. And so they did an EAS, environmental assessment, and their determination in that environmental assessment was a neg deck, that there was no negative impact of changing the water level in the reservoir. So this is a similar thing. The difference is that this was fought went to court, and in court they lost. The judge said there's obviously going to be an environmental impact because you're changing the way parking works on the street and in commercial corridors, and so they sent it back. And my understanding, and Jody can correct me, so see her hand is up. My understanding at the base level, at least, is that they now have a choice. They can either redo their environmental assessment, or they can accept that they need to do an environmental impact study and proceed with doing that. And that we're right now at that decision point where we're waiting to see what they do. That's my understanding. So Jody, what does that mostly jive with what you understand this process to be?
Sort of, except for I did read through the ruling, but it was when it first came out.
Yeah, I read it too, but it was a few weeks ago.
And it sounded like they just skipped the EAS part and made their own neg deck without even doing the initial study. They were just like, no impact.
Well, they did such a basic study. I think that's what what Rosemary was quoting, is that their study was so had so many assumptions of omnipotence, and that they had said they basically didn't make the rules. They have no guidelines for how the program is going to work. And this is that omnipotence quote, is that they're saying these rules don't exist yet, so we can't assess what their impact will be, but we're sure they're going to be great. And so there's no negative impact.
Right, but that's common with an EAS, is
Right.
the city does that a lot with the whole zoning, ZQA and MIH. They were like, oh, we don't know the impact, so there won't be any. But But if they had done an EAS, it should be posted online and I could not find it. So
It's there.
It's there.
I'll
Is it?
send it to
Okay.
you. It's
it
there.
Yeah.
wasn't up when I had looked. So
It's 179 pages long, but here's the problem, Jody. It's 179 pages long that they base a lot of pictures. You know, this is do pictures in your. The problem is they made a judgment that based on their EAS, there's no environmental impact. That's what the judge went after. He said, this is the very definition of impermissible prejudgment. This judge was vicious on DOT and they're ignoring what the implications of this project were. So we're gonna,
So we'll keep an eye on it. Yeah.
it's
guess
more
I'm
than
so
an eye on
jaded.
it. More
I
than
guess
an
I'm
eye.
so jaded, Rosemary, from all the Hebrew homes, 300 and plus units had no environmental impact. The 3.5 acre, 155 foot tall power station on the triangle had no environmental impact. I'm just so jaded from land use that I'm like, DOT's just doing what everybody else did. So, okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they are doing what everybody else does, but that doesn't necessarily mean they should keep doing that. Mary Ellen.
Hi, so are they saying that DOT is against those outdoor things on the street?
I know that in February, I think January or February, DOT became the agency that is responsible for the permitting process for the open street restaurant program. And so they're then responsible for putting together the rules of how it's going to work, the permanent program. And so that's what this is this is the rulemaking process for the new permanent open street restaurant program.
No, because I know a lot of people are gonna bite my head off this, but I'm totally for those. During the pandemic, they forced all these people to spend all this money to have these outdoor dining so that they wouldn't lose their restaurants and their living. And now you want to come back after all this and say, well, you built that, you spend all that money, and now we're going to charge you for it. It's they're going to lose money. They already lost their shirts in the pandemic, and now you're going to hit them again.
So I think one of the reasons that the neg deck thing is so controversial or whatever is that if they had to do the EIS, the environmental impact study, part of that is public hearings. And so it wouldn't necessarily mean that the project was doomed or anything like that. It would just mean that the rules themselves would have to be held up to scrutiny. They'd have to actually define them to some degree, and that they would need to have public hearings about them.
That's why they have to take them down after spending all that money, and then.
So, yeah. But then, people would be able to we would probably get at a more robust endpoint with a lot better inputs about how the program should actually be run, in theory.
So they wouldn't have to take them down, they would just have to pay to have it.
Yeah, I don't know what the permitting fees are gonna be or anything like that. But
I would
probably,
hate to
also
see them
rules
have to
about
take
like
all that into spending all that money.
all that, okay, but we'll definitely, it's a issue that is evolving, so we'll keep an
Yeah,
eye
I'm
on it.
for it. It's nice. I like it.
Is there any other new business? Yeah. All right, so do I have a motion to
Motion
adjourn?
to, yes, I
All
do.
right, do I have a second?
Second.
All
Wow,
right, then.
early tonight, yay.
I know, 9:30, like almost like a normal meeting.
Wow, I can almost get sleep and watch the rest of Dr. Pimple Popper.
All right,
Good night,
everybody. Good to
everybody.
see you. All right, good night.
Bye.
Night.